KHTS, your hometown station.
Hey there, everybody. This is KHTS News Director Michael Brown here, back in the studio again here with Patty. Patty, how are you doing today, first of all?
Michael, I am doing fantastic today, sir.
This is why Patty is one of my favorite people in the world, everybody. So if you've been paying attention here to the radio station, the past couple days you've known that we've been interviewing all the candidates that we could about the run for Assembly District 38. Very sudden and shocking election coming up here in the wake of Katie Hill's resignation for Congress. Now we've got Christy Smith running for that, leaving the possibility of her assembly seat open. Sitting here with me today is one of those candidates. We've got Kelvin Driscoll. Kelvin, how you doing?
Good afternoon. So I'm excited to be here with Michael and Patty today.
It's going to be a good time.
Let me hang out. Yeah.
So first off, for people who may not know who you are, your campaign, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Yeah, who am I? So I'm Kelvin. Thanks for the introduction. My wife, Javane, and I live here in Santa Clarita. We've been here since 2016. Javane and I are both county workers. I work for the Los Angeles County Department of Public Social Services. As a director, I oversee all policy for our programs for single adults, so individuals without children. And Javane works for our County Department of Mental Health. We're both social workers. We met working in nonprofit in South Los Angeles, putting homeless women and children in homes and off the streets.
That's amazing. So what prompted you to hop into the race here?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is all kind of started with former Republican Hill's resignation. Assemblywoman Smith declared her candidacy for Congress, and I say life changed for Javane and I pretty significantly, really fast. But it really just started, Michael, honestly, with some encouragement from some colleagues who were familiar with my work. During my time at the county, I've had the opportunity to serve as Child Welfare and Human Services Deputy to LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn. And when I was completing my master's in social work, I was an intern in the office of then California Assembly Speaker Karen Bass. And so just having people being familiar with your work, they were like, don't you live like in that Santa Clarita like area, like way up there? And
where
I was
all
like,
the craziness is happening right now.
I'm like, yeah. They're like, you should really consider like your experiences in nonprofit, your experiences in the county, certainly understanding the interaction that we have with the state. You should think about it. I said no. Very early on, just understanding what life in Sacramento was like. I have a 2-year-old daughter. Her name's Ava, and one of the highlights of my day is putting Ava to sleep. Bedtime stories. And as a legislator in Sacramento, you're there Monday through Wednesday. You're coming home on Thursday afternoon, and you're off to fun in the district for the weekend. But I say, it was really the Saugus High shooting that changed that conversation for Javane and I, particularly given our backgrounds in social work and in the mental health space and our work with, youth, on the child welfare side. I was just really pushed, I think, internally, not by anyone, to have a conversation around student health and wellness and well-being and really looking at how we can help my position in Sacramento, should I be fortunate to be elected, to bring my experiences to really help inside the home, to engage in a way that's a little bit different than just talking about common sense background checks or restriction of firearms, but that's what really started us on this journey. Just a little bit over, I think it's 12 weeks now. Somewhere around Thanksgiving was when we were sitting with our family talking about the possibility of running for office.
Wow. So then would you say that those sort of issues would be counted in your top 3 issues? You'd say, what would you say those top 3 would be going into Sacramento?
Certainly. So, and it's an interesting question, and the way that I answer it is, coming from a district, you certainly have what you believe to be the important issues of your district, but what we know about Sacramento is you're one of 80, right? You also have the governor, you have the speaker, and so I think there are broad issues that the state would like to focus on, which we certainly have interest in here in the district, like homelessness, like economic mobility, creating more good-paying jobs where people live. But I think as a part of the education conversation, student health, wellness, well-being, kind of what I call mental hygiene, certainly fits in that broader conversation. And, that's where I would like to put some of my efforts, should I be fortunate enough to be elected to that seat.
So if you're elected to that seat then, What sort of specific things would you implement in terms of, like you said, student mental hygiene in our education system?
Yeah, so certainly I've drawn from my experiences at the county and working with the county's Department of Mental Health. I've also been very fortunate to have conversations with our school board members here in the district about what they see as some of the best resources to help on the ground. There's been some early efforts around student wellness centers, on-campus wellness centers, that I think we have an opportunity to expand. But I think also working closely with the LA County Department of Mental Health, think about how we educate our students about it's okay to reach out, for help if things aren't going well. I certainly think, I was in high school not too long ago, and I think there was a certain level of stress, but I think now students just face an exponential amount of stress. And I'm not talking about just academically. There's lots of research even on the exponential impacts of cyberbullying, for example. And, before, if we were bullied, it was just kind of you and I, and maybe Patty might be around and he might see it, and then, he could go tell one or two other people. But when you think about it in the context of social media, it quickly becomes not just you and I, but you and I and now our thousands of friends. And so I just think that there are ways to think about how our students are impacted today, what stressors they face, and then promoting a healthy conversation around, dealing with those things.
So you're talking about mental health. A little bit ago, you mentioned tackling the issue of homelessness.
Yeah.
We have a growing homeless crisis, it seems, here in the state of California.
Yeah.
In Assembly, would you say that some of those mental health aspects contribute to that, and what would you do in Sacramento?
Yeah.
What measures would you take to kind of address homelessness as a whole?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Michael. I started my career in homeless services, and as a campaign, it certainly meant a lot for me to have the endorsement of one of our homeless service providers here in Santa Clarita, Peggy Edwards, in her work in the homelessness in the district. But I think we have to look at homelessness in two ways, and I think the numbers that are coming out are talking to us about there's an economic mobility issue. So there's a certain group of homeless individuals who are finding themselves homeless for the first time because of either job loss or rent burden or wages not keeping up. And I think that there's a certain set of strategies for those individuals around economic and job development. But there's also a group of homelessness individuals, or as I like to say, neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, who are tackling tough mental health and substance abuse issues. And I really think it's about coordinating. You're asking me what am I doing from Sacramento, which I think is a distinction, right? Mm-hmm. What can I do from Sacramento? And I think it's about coordinating with our local county departments of mental health and our local county departments of public health, specifically our substance abuse prevention and control units, to really think about how we increase treatment. And again, it's not unlike and untied to the conversation that we just had about really expanding that conversation around treatment being okay. It's not, a bad thing. And how do we look at making more resources available for that specific, population as it relates to homelessness?
Nice. Now, so that's the second component you mentioned, but you also mentioned the first component of homelessness being sort of economic mobility.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there's a series of strategies to address that. What are those strategies in your view?
Yeah, so, and I hate to get granular on this, but even when you start to break it down by population, right, I think there are a certain set of strategies that we can look at. Youth, for example, and those in our community colleges, or those just starting out in the workforce, we certainly want to make sure, and grateful for this this process. I got to talk with our carpenters union, and what they really helped me take hold of, and what I've held on to from that conversation was good mortgage paying jobs. So you have to think about jobs, not just that pay a wage, but pay a mortgage, paying jobs. And I certainly think that we have opportunities with high growth industries. The film industry, for example, being one. There are some threads to that. Healthcare being another, tech being another, to think about how we train the next workforce to get into good mortgage paying jobs. But I also think when it comes to those individuals who are losing their jobs, how do we help them to get back into the workforce as quickly as possible? And I think that's where we have an opportunity with our workforce development department, specifically at the county. Certainly the state plays a role in that, but working closer on the ground where people exist to get them back in work quickly, so that the impact is not as great when they are losing their jobs.
Now, on the subject of jobs, on the subject of the economic, sorry about that. Somebody's calling me on my computer.
That's all right.
Unprofessional. So last year it was passed and January 1st instated Assembly Bill 5.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going there.
That's been a hot topic.
Yeah.
For those unfamiliar, that's regarding contract work.
Right.
Most people are seeing it in the terms of rideshare drivers, Uber
Right.
Eats, things
Right.
like that.
Right.
But it also impacts things like truck drivers,
Right.
things like even freelance writers,
Yep.
freelance artists.
Yeah.
What is your take on Assembly Bill 5? Do you think it's doing more harm than good? Do you think it's actually long-term a better thing?
Yeah.
What's your kind of take on it?
Yeah, so certainly being in the policy space for a better part of my career, the way that I approach this is that you always approach policy with good intentions, and I think AB 5 was envisioned with good intentions about how do we make sure that individuals are not being taken advantage of in their workspace. That being said, I think we're seeing the unintentional impacts, and I certainly think that those who are being harmed, by it are helping us to understand the impact of that. And now the legislative process is taking shape to really figure out, well, where are the fixes, and how do we improve it quickly so that we're not harming people.
So then, just real quick, then,
Yeah.
what would you maybe think a quick fix would be, or not maybe a quick fix, but what sort of fix could be implemented?
Yeah, so I always think that you want to go broad stakeholder. So I think as we're even crafting the solutions, we have to make sure that our small businesses community that are at the table to really help us understand the on-the-ground impacts and work with them on deciding what are the fixes. I do think that we're in a little bit of a Swiss cheese phase right now with, kind of all the carve-outs and let's cut this out and cut this out, and eventually you have nothing. So I think it may be worth kind of, again, going back to what was the intention of the legislation, and then making sure through broad stakeholder engagement we bring everyone to the table to make sure that we're crafting a policy that's not doing more harm, as you say, than good.
Awesome. Now, one last question here.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Saugus shooting got you motivated to enter the race. We're coming up here pretty soon on the 4-month anniversary. We just passed the 3-month, coming up on the 4-month next couple weeks here.
Yeah.
What do you see in terms of school safety, public safety, that could have maybe prevented something like that?
Yeah, that's a really, how much time do we have?
Not enough,
It's a really tough.
unfortunately,
It's a really tough question, and hindsight is always 20/20 on these things. But what I say is, when you have a 15-year-old kid who wakes up in the morning and decides he's gonna go shoot his classmates, and then turns the gun on himself and shoots himself, we have more than a restriction, a firearm issue there. We have complex mental health challenges there, and so I think it's about starting to advance this conversation about it's okay to talk with people about how you're feeling, so that as a cry out for help, we don't have these types of situations.
Awesome. Well, this has been Kelvin Driscoll here. I've been Michael Brown talking to Mr. Driscoll about his campaign here for Assembly, kind of his stances here.
Yeah.
Kelvin, if anybody wanted to look up your campaign or anybody wanted to learn more about you, do you have a website or a number that they can get hold of?
Yes, of course. The campaign would kill me if I didn't say this. So please visit our website, KelvinDriscoll4Assembly.com. We're on all the social media platforms. So Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Check us out. Give us feedback. I love the conversation.
Awesome. Special election coming up on March 3rd, this Tuesday. Doesn't matter who you vote for, just get out there and vote, everybody. This has been Michael Brown. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Patty.
KHTS.